Hello, it's us back again. It's Pat and Dave doing the Wave by Subaru Mechanics. As you can see here, we are super excited. We got a lot going on. We have put up some new shorts, some new videos. Everything is going awesome. The YouTube channel is bumping. We got our Facebook page up now, which is going to have some of our content on there if you guys are on Facebook. I'm sure you guys are. You're already part of the Subaru Mechanics group on Facebook. So that's where this all began. And yeah, things have been going really well. We got a couple comments on some of our new videos, and one of our comments was from a viewer that actually has a Subaru podcast, or I'm sorry, a Subaru blog, and was asking us to talk about the new WRX car that Travis Pastrana is driving for the new rally class. Or I guess he's trying, yeah, I guess it's like a new rally class with cars that are a little bit cheaper and a little bit slower so that more people can get involved in rally. So I just want to open this up here. So we are very thankful to Taylor, who shared with us her blog, which you can find here. She goes by Sube or subite.blogspot.com for her blog. But this is the article that she actually wrote up on the new rally car that Travis Pastrana is driving. And we read through it and we think it's great. We think that she did a great job writing this up. She wrote here that she interned at Rally Spec in New Jersey, and I'm from New Jersey. That's where I live, so awesome. And yeah, we're just going to dive in a little bit here. So the main takeaway that Dave and I read through and found is that Travis Pastrana is trying to take Rally in a direction where more people can find it accessible. I know from myself working in NHRA, drag racing is crazy. You have to have a custom built car. I worked for Alan Przinski, who had the Dodge Dart. I used to build his engines and put his cars together. And we had 3 identical 1,500 horsepower engines. And at the end of the year, right, let's say you make $1 million, racing. It costs you about that to keep racing. You throw a rod, you're rebuilding an engine. You hit a wall, you're getting a new chassis. Like, the amount of money that you have to dump into racing is crazy. And so for a lot of people, that's the barrier to entry. So what Travis is trying to do is trying to make it so that more people can buy a car like a WRX, outfit it with the safety precautions that you need to race it, and then you can start somewhere in rally without having to have a top of the line car with custom fuel cells and special suspension and all these things that people require to race at higher levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Dave, I'm sure from working at a Subaru only shop and working in the performance field, like you can attest to what it takes to keep racing and what is on the table every time that you try to compete.
It's really derived in a lot of partnerships, and sponsors play a big role in furthering in the continuation of motorsports in a lot of ways. And so you find there are fortunately a lot of more grassroots endeavors coming up throughout motorsports, which I think is a very lofty endeavor. I mean, it's often been the kind of gateway entry point for a lot of people is a lemons race. It's a very low barrier cost standpoint, but even still, everyone looks at it and says, just from the start, they say it's a $2,000 car, let's say as an entry point or what have you. Well, you do have to have it outfitted with a proper roll cage and safety equipment, as you mentioned, and things like that. And these things come at, a moderate expense. And for the average person that's not a fabricator, you're going to have to seek out a local shop that wants to hopefully partner in that kind of environment and that type of event. Which, if you look around, you'll find. Well, they're out there. We're out there. We have yet to build a lemons car ourselves, but we have definite aspirations to building one in the near future, and we'll definitely be documenting that. And I think it'll be exciting because one of my favorite parts to the lemons racing aspect has always been the bribery that transpires when it comes to the tech inspection, if you will, and the judges. And I've heard, depending if your tech inspection happens to be around lunchtime, a good a good sandwich can go a long way to the judges on overlooking that used turbo you might have had that was sitting in your shed for a couple years and didn't really cost you more than $50, let's say.
That's funny. Yeah, I've always had aspirations to race in a lemon race. I was trying to get our shop on board with that, but I think even with a lemon race, right? Like the money you have to spend, like they say the car has to be $500 or less, but you can spend anything you want on safety, which involves brakes, wheels, tires, like, things like that. So at the end of the day, people will still spend 5, 10, 15 grand on just safety equipment, but really
Yeah.
what they're doing is they're giving themselves the edge on a beater that is going to outrun everybody else. So, it sounds like a cheap race, the lemon race, $500, but really at the end of the day, like racing is expensive. It's just the nature of the beast. You're beating on a vehicle, it needs parts. Parts are expensive. It's all part of the game.
And if you ain't rubbing, you ain't racing, as the old expression goes, or old quote.
Also true.
So that means you're going to break stuff.
Yeah. Something else I wanted to show here is another article on this new rally platform that Travis is putting together. This is on hrally.com by even Evan Rothman, and basically he just talks about the new ARA 25. It's put together by Vermont Racing. They're the ones who basically build these rally car outfits, and yeah, just basically wanted to be at a lower price point so that people get into it. They built this awesome WRX, 2.4 liter FA24 boxer. Um, Looks like it's got the L four-wheel drive class mandated 33 millimeter restrictor, 315 horsepower, 460 torque, X shift 6-speed sequential gearbox, and 3-plate carbon brace clutch. I have to say, one of my guilty things that I've always wanted is a sequential gearbox. I hear they break a lot, but I really want one. Suspension is built by R53 Motorsport springs and dampers, OZ competition wheels. I mean, this to me feels like they're building more of a more of like a off-road like weekend beater Subaru than they are trying to compete at the highest level of rally. You know what I mean? They've toned a lot of things down, and like obviously you're not going to find a weekend car having a sequential gearbox, but the fact that they are trying to make it as close to an actual WRX as they can while still being competitive is kind of interesting. And I find it really cool that they're doing this. I mean, even in this article, Travis Pastrana said that it's a fun car, but everything is bumping a little bit more, and you're taking a little bit more of a slide when you make the turns because it's just not fully flushed out. And like that's part of the fun of it is you got new people coming into the sport and they got to learn how to fight through the corners and they got to learn how to get over the big bumps. And I think it's kind of cool that they're making this more accessible to people that kind of learn and get into it. So
And it really speaks to Subaru's, ultimately their rally pedigree, throughout the years, and that their platform in essence, while they may have removed certainly I doubt that it has eyesight. I doubt it surely doesn't have a touchscreen radio in there, and there's a lot of things that were removed subsequently, but those core fundamentals from a Subaru platform are still there, alive and well, and they're maybe accentuated and highlighted through the gearbox and things like that, but they're still at their core, they're not putting another, manufacturer's engine under the hood and slapping their brand name on it. They are very true to what they've done and done very well for a long time, and inherently one of the predominant accolades of the Boxer engine is that it is so very inherently low and flat and has a very low center of gravity from a handling characteristic, and especially when you ultimately start to lift the vehicle. That's something we talk a lot about, where once you lift any Subaru or any vehicle, you change that vehicle's center of gravity. When you look at people that are lifting, off-road vehicles, Jeeps, not to single anyone out or anything like that, but they're a lot higher of a platform to begin with. And then you elevate that even further, coupled with a higher center of gravity from the engine mounting points, things like that, that makes it more prone to tipping over compared to a Subaru. I've seen Subarus, both on rally as well as from an off-roading standpoint, put at very extreme angles, and where probably a lot of other vehicles would have tipped, but they haven't.
Yeah. I think that something about this that we talk about sometimes is everybody's different, right? There's a million people that they're all going to look at this differently. Some people look at it as, okay, you're lowering the price to build the car and you're bringing this class down to a little bit of a slower class, but you're making it a little bit easier to get into, even though you still have to meet all the safety requirements, right? I mean, if you're looking at the car, right, you could assume that like some people, if they start to cut corners, now you're cutting major corners because you're already lowering the class in what is required to race. So now you have people that if they are really trying to get into it, and let's say they don't have a ton of money and like they're barely able to make the cheaper class, well, now they're trying to cut corners to even make that. So, I think that there's a little bit of precaution and like maybe they just need to really make sure that everybody who's signing up is like legit and they're checking all these cars ahead of time because no matter what, man, a rally track is an animal. And if you get on there
Sure.
and you don't know what you're doing, it's not going to go well. It's really not. And that's just a little bit of me, my personal side saying like, I hope everybody who races in this is careful and knows what they're doing. But I could just see the potential of anytime you make something cheaper, the people who
Yeah.
are cheap come out and then they are trying to cut corners to make it even cheaper.
Well, and I guess my immediate, circle back is you look at like Lemons Racing, and that is kind of the epitome, and kind of exemplifies what it, you know, still very grassroots, motorsport, and very, much one of the lowest, I think to date, one of the lowest entry points to get into racing. And even on that level, they still, at the end of the day, jokes aside about bribery with a submarine sandwich,
Yeah.
you're not alluding to tech inspection and safety, from that standpoint. The ultimate reason those guys are there is not to get lunch. They're there to make sure that your car is safe to be on the track with everybody else, because that's something that we all, as enthusiasts, we're all responsible for, is the safety of everyone else around us as well. And making sure your vehicle is safe is part of that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think I'm excited to see where this goes. And you know, I'm gonna be seeing Travis Pastrana hopefully at Boxer Fest in September. I know he is gonna be at Wicked Big Me in I think another week. So by the time this
So,
episode comes out, it should be there.
man, time's flying.
I know. um, But part of this conversation with racing, something else I wanted to touch on is Formula Drift is also coming around the bend. That's going to be 2 weeks from now. So, probably a week from you guys listening to the podcast. At least for me in New Jersey, they're going to be here June 9th to the 1st. And Formula Drift, I love. I'm a big drift guy. I love it. I always want to make it every year. And the biggest, toughest thing about Formula Drift is that Subaru is not big on it. There's not a ton of sponsorship opportunities for Subaru. They have a couple people that have tried. But it's basically what everybody says is that Toyota is huge on it. If you want to race a GR86 or a Scion, or you want to race a Toyota Supra, there are sponsorship opportunities in those fields. And I think that it's crazy that Subaru doesn't want to be involved. For anybody who's not familiar with Formula Drift, it was founded in 2003. They go to multiple venues across Long Beach, New Jersey, Atlanta, Irwindale, all over the place. only rear-wheel drive vehicles. I don't think you have to say that, um, but yeah, I mean, the most recent people that have been successful in it is Chris Forsberg. He's a three-time champion, 2009, 2014, 2016. He's got a Nissan Z that he drives. I mean, there's a couple of them. A lot of people like the Nissans in Formula Drift. Eric Osmo, three-time champion, 2015, 21, 22. He's one of the more recent three-time champions. He drives a Toyota GR Supra called the Norwegian Hammer, one of my favorites. And then James Dean, who's still racing as well. He's got a Nissan S15. He's one of the more aggressive guys. He's had pretty dominant runs through 17 to 19, three consecutive titles. That's a little bit of the history of some of their drivers. A lot of them you can see drive Toyotas and Nissans because that's where the market is. Subarus have competed in Formula Drift. It's rare, but it does happen. Steven Verdier drove a STI rear-wheel drive converted in '07 to 2010. He earned a few podiums, known as the only competitive Subaru. I guess there wasn't many that could keep up with him. Car was turbocharged, rear-wheel drive only, STI with extensive suspension work. Retired from Formula Drift to pursue rally and stunt driving. Not surprising, because when you are a Subaru guy, that's where the sponsorships are and that's where the money is. So if you're going to try to be competitive in something and you have all this talent and skill as a driver, that's where you want to be. You don't want to be wasting your time in Formula Drift, and Subaru's like, well, we're not interested in this. It's a little bit of a
Well, and
tougher
I think
show.
from a Formula Drift standpoint, just as kind of an entity, I think there is a lot to be said about why the current landscape, let's call it, of the current vehicles, as you mentioned, are predominantly, the majority. And several reasons for that is just from a platform standpoint. Again, you mentioned the obvious. Well, rear wheel drive, derives, you have to have a rear wheel drive vehicle. And certainly Subaru does manufacture one in partnership with Toyota. But at the same time, how many other rear wheel drive vehicles have been made throughout history? And a lot of what you find in the earlier iterations of sports like Formula Drift, where a grassroots kind of movement happens, which I believe that's how they started. It wasn't overnight, they just came out of nowhere. Provocated that was, okay, what are the cheap cars that we can get our hands on that are available, that we can rear wheel drive, and we can slap an LS under the hood and make a bunch of power for really cheap. And that's kind of the formula. And your biggest expenditure long term is going to obviously be tires, of course. And that's
Yeah.
where I actually know several friends who are involved in drift events across, different areas. And it's a telltale. They talk about how the expensive tires and how they generally try to find a relationship with a local auto repair shop where they can effectively garner free used tires for practice and things like that for the general population aren't fit to be on the road, certainly, but they still have a lap or two on the if you're just burning them out and trying to pop them, so to speak. And so that's where these guys find some haven in, from a cost standpoint, in getting used tires and things like that. But that's their biggest, I think, cost. And otherwise, once you build the car, I think the ultimate goal is to keep the cost as low as possible. Ultimately, that's the name of the game with, I think, the majority of grassroots motorsports, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, lots and lots and lots of tires. It's definitely the biggest expense in drifting. I mean, you look at every sport, I mean, even drag racing, those tires, I mean, you're blowing big money, yeah, especially on those wheels too. It's crazy. Um, yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is like drifting has never been Subaru's thing. It's always been rally. It's always been all-wheel drive. I mean, they've had rear-wheel drive cars before, but like realistically, this just isn't their deal. And we've talked about it before that like they like to stay in their lane. They know what makes them money, and they know
Uh,
that their fans are not really at Formula Drift. Like that's the Toyotas and the BMWs and all these people that like that stuff. I mean, but that's the thing too, is like when you push into a new market, you could make it your market. They could come out with another rear wheel drive car. There's a lot of things that they could do. Yeah. I mean, there's another couple people that have tried. They brought the BRZs in. They had Ken Gucci in early test events. But I mean, basically, they're saying that most drivers choose the 8.6 or the FRS just because of sponsorship opportunities. So, I mean, what are you going to do at the end of the day? If the money's not there, you got to figure it out. So, a
And at
lot
the
of
end of the
these,
day, that's a conflict of interest to some degree. If you have FRSs, you know what I mean, Subarus competing on the same platform, there is some overlap there as far as the two companies, you know,
yeah,
with obviously a partnership. And so for them to be, you know, both in the same motorsport, I think there is certainly a little bit of consideration that probably takes place there. You know, it'd be like, I know not doesn't sound the same, but like Nissan and Infinity competing in the same, you know, Le Mans race. It's like, well, you're kind of the same people, you know?
yeah, yeah. I would love to see which car company would want to sponsor a 24-hour Lemons race car. I
Well, we have
was
future goals to do our own. That's just that's gonna happen one of these days.
Well, I was saying as a mechanic shop, or like if you were going to sponsor something, what better thing to sponsor than a $500 car that was able to survive a 24-hour race? I mean, if you can prove that the mechanic work that you do to a $500 beater can survive and win a race against all these other beaters, I mean, you're proving your worth right there. People are going to come to your shop and be like, this guy can build stuff that lasts. So, hey, that's my take on
Especially
it.
if it's a 24-hour lemons race. That's I think you're to your level that or to our level that it'd be a multi employee event where everybody obviously has to swap out. You know, they don't let a driver race for 24 hours, so everyone gets to have seat time. You know, as the racer lingo goes, everyone pees in the same seat. You know, talk about shop bonding. But yeah, you're right because a 24-hour race, it's less to do with who's the fastest. It's whose car can endure. You're right for 24 hours ripping around a racetrack
Yeah,
and not break down. And or if it breaks down, can you fix it fast enough and get it back on track?
yeah. I mean, if you end up doing it, I'm in. Just give me a call. I'll be there. I've been pushing for
We
it.
will
So
have Subaru Mechanics as a proud sponsor. That is
we'll have
no
to print.
questions asked.
I'll get the whole vinyl made up for the side of the car. Don't worry about it.
Yes, we're definitely gonna do it.
Well, Dave, something that I was getting a lot of today is people want an update on the Baja.
That is actually going to be coming proudly. We've scheduled it. The oil change will be happening next or this upcoming week.
Awesome.
So stay tuned. That is coming very soon. It may not be immediate first thing Monday morning. It may not be released, but that is on our agenda, scheduled, marked in pencil to get it done this week. Because actually, we just hit just about 3,000 miles. We're pretty close. We're 2,800, which I just looked at it today and realized that's close enough.
Yeah.
So we're gonna switch it over to the canola oil, and we're gonna be documenting every mile.
I posted it in a couple places today, and people were confused. They thought that we were filling the gas tank with canola oil, and they were saying it was going to blow up immediately. And I said, no, no, no. This is, you know, they were saying if it was diesel, it'd eat it, no problem. And I'm like, yeah, well, diesel eats everything, but you know,
Yeah.
but no, we are filling the oil with canola oil.
Yes.
Oh,
We are filling the engine with engine oil with canola oil, and we got some really thick stuff. So yeah, we're ready to go.
yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I'm excited to see the outcome of this, and just the feedback that I got today from people watching the new short we put out is everybody was like so excited. They just want to take their bet and see how far it's gonna go. So
Yeah, and we'll have to make as we talk, we'll make a post and we'll discuss something here on the back end, and we'll come up with some sort of giveaway for whoever comes closest to the mileage that it makes it. But at the same time, we are going to do a clean and clear 3,000 miles, no cheating. We will record the mileage, document it, and everything. We're going to do 3,000 miles, assuming it makes 3,000 miles to those who don't think it'll make 3,000 miles, but we will all just wait and see if it makes it. And I'm of the camp. I think it'll make it. I think the old girl, as we she's yellow, by the way, for anyone who wants to imagine what our Baja looks like. It's the bright yellow, and so aptly she's gotten the nickname at the shop of Big Bird. And
Man.
I'm confident that Big Bird will be just fine because she's seen way worse than what we're about to do to her before we got her. She was in very, very, very rough shape. Talk about almost borderline Lemon's car. We got it for not far off of that $500 budget. There may have been some wiggle room there, at least as far as some Subway sandwiches for the judges.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. I was gonna have Trenton Tier on today. I wanted to talk to him about what he thought about the canola challenge.
We'll get
Um
him on.
we're working on it. He's a tough guy to nail down. He's got a big operation, um but yeah, we have a lot more coming, and we're super excited for all the new content that we're gonna be putting out. We were talking about possibly going to SEMA and trying to get some videos there. So if you guys ever see us out, please feel free to say hi. Like I said, we at least I don't know about Dave yet, but I will be at Boxer Fest. So
We're working on I'm working on getting there. Worst case scenario, we have a surprise that Pat and I are talking about as far as a giveaway. In person or not, we have some cool stuff to give away, as well as Pat just mentioned, we're talking about future plans to do a SEMA appearance and potentially film maybe a live podcast while we're out there. Who knows?
yeah. Well, Dave, this leads us into my favorite segment. As you know, I have been doing a lot of research and going into the BRX files, as I call it. And I got another one for you today, something that has been complained about a lot, but I don't think a lot of people know why. Everybody thinks that Subaru CVTs are a problem. They've gotten a bad rep for themselves. Everybody thought that this was the end all be all. CVTs are trash and whatever else. But the story today is the hidden recall that Subaru never made. Um, the secret CVT valve body defect, which is something that I don't think a lot of people know about. So back um, with certain models between like 2012 to 2015, there was a couple Subaru models with CVTs that were having issues, and uh, you know everybody kept bringing it to the dealer, and Subaru was essentially fixing the problem, which they knew was the problem, but they wouldn't tell people kind of like what was going on. So Subaru had not issued a formal recall for the specific component, but the evidence indicates that it was a widespread problem and actions were not really taken until later. So for anybody who needs an update, the valve body is crucial for the CVT system. It regulates the hydraulic pressure and controlling gear ratios. Failure can cause harsh shifting, transmission slipping, warning lights, limp mode, all these things. Your car could like freak out. And so all these owners of all these different vehicles started to report they're having all these crazy problems. Crosstrek XV forums were blowing up, people saying that they only had 100K on their car and, transmission is freaking out. What ended up happening is, in lieu of a recall, Uber extended the powertrain warranty on certain models to 10 years, 100,000 miles, specifically addressing CVT concerns. The extension was for 2010 to 15 Legacies and Outbacks, 2012 to 15 Impreza, 2013 to 15 Crosstreks, and 2014 to 15 Foresters. But the extension had limitations. It covers only original equipment and genuine Subaru replacement CVTs. Makes sense. Vehicles over 10 years old or with more than 100,000 miles as of July 31st, 2017 required inspections or repairs to be completed by July 31st, 2018. So the big thing about Subarus is a lot of people take them on long road trips and off-roading. If you hit over 100,000 miles, they could be like, oh, too bad. It's like, and this is like a pretty wide range. I mean, you're talking about 2010 all the way to 2015. There are people that in that gap, they will put over 100,000 miles on easy. Um,
Absolutely.
So, and then the other thing is repairs exceeding $10,000 require prior authorization. If you basically need a whole new trans and maybe your trans driving it messed up, like mess something else up, and now you're in the hole for 15 grand, like Subaru could be like, no. So,
And this is something we actually we saw, and it's something that we in a large part, it's what's impacted a lot of our current policies, or rather procedures, on looking after a vehicle that comes in for a costly repair that, compared to, other than like, wiper blades or, brakes, let's say. I've never seen a brake issue be, any kind of a, gray area, as you kind of mentioned, warranty type deal. And that's kind of how this circumstance rolled out. And we luckily stumbled into this several years back, and we realized what was going on. And in those instances, we were able to fortunately refer those customers over to the dealer to have that service taken care of for free. However, you're right. And it was kind of one of those limited time window things and very circumstantial. And, um, that's kind of where it was, that kind of very gray area, kind of almost recall, not really recall. They didn't formally say anything was wrong as much as they just tried their best, I think, to ultimately tell and take care of, I would say, as many customers they could, but a bulk of the initial, let's call it wave, if you will, of customers that were standing in front of them or about to be in front of them. And that kind of, circles back to another episode previously we discussed about CVTs and the the ongoing lack of maintenance that is ill-advised from across the board, all manufacturers these days, where they're just telling, customers, don't replace your oil for 18,000 miles in your engine. Oh, that fluid in your transmission it's a lifetime sealed transmission. You never replace the fluid. Those are just loads of
crazy.
BS, it's absolute lunacy. And we know this in the service industry. And that's not to say the service industry is, raking in hand over fist on fluid changes, because
Yeah.
it's what is a necessity to keeping cars on the road. And effectively, yes, that goes hand in hand with our investment as, independent shops, and the good shops, rather, not just independents, but the good shops out there that are really taking care of their customers' best interests and looking after, going, well, how is this customer going to come back to me for any other needs if their car blows up? They're just going to buy another one every 3 to 5 years, and fortunately we haven't got to that extreme. I would hope not ever, but certainly in the age of kind of just this throwaway society that we find ourselves in, it's becoming more and more a place where the manufacturers are effectively expecting you less to repair to buy another one.
Yeah, I mean, things just aren't built to last anymore. It's the warranty is created so that by the time that the warranty ends, you need a new car. It's really more of a countdown than it is a warranty. But
Mhm.
something interesting is Subaru actually faced legal challenges over the CVT system. There was a class action settlement for the 2019 and the 2020 Ascent models, and anybody who was affected by it received between $400 and $750, depending on number of repair attempts and benefit from extended warranties. So that right there is like crazy. I mean, the Ascent is one of those models that I feel like maybe Subaru rushed, because at least my experiences of dealing with them, the parts are impossible to get. They're always crazy expensive, and there's almost nothing available. And it's just every time I have to call for a part on a Super Ascent, it's a nightmare. It's crazy. And I feel like, yes, it is a newer model, but at the same time, like, part of it is that, like, I just don't think that they really thought through some of these things when they pushed these cars out.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and people expect Subarus to be the same thing in every car. That's what their whole brand has always been. And so when you make the Ascent and it's like they're trying to push into like what feels like a different kind of vehicle, it's like it throws everything off. So
And unfortunately, they, to your point about kind of feels rushed with the one of the more predominant things that we've noticed and seen with a sense singularly coming through our shop is a influx of particular components wearing out prematurely by mechanical standards. So the number one, worst offender would be wheel bearings. We've seen wheel bearings particularly go as soon as anywhere from 20,000 miles, or right around there, which is quite frankly pretty egregious to see that a wheel bearing would be failing at 20,000 miles. Unfortunately, well, again, we're not engineers, Norma, but we've come to the kind of conclusion based on our belief is, and upon working on these vehicles, the wheel bearings are marginally no bigger than the same wheel bearings on an Outback, or rather an Impreza. They're all kind of using a lot of that same kind of, Subaru mentioned that global platform, which has pros and cons from a manufacturing standpoint. However, if you're always digging into the same parts bin for, an SUV and for a sedan, there may be some issues there as far as, like I said, those components being put under way more stress.
yeah, and I mean the Ascent, that has to be the biggest vehicle they've made in a long time. I don't know if they've ever made a vehicle bigger than the
Hands down.
Ascent.
It's heavier than you think the Tribecas are. The
That's right.
Tribecas were never anywhere near as heavy as these are.
Yeah, and so if you're using the same wheel bearings, they've never been tested on a car of this weight other than the testing they've done with the Ascents, but like still, you never know until with a new model. That's why they always say don't buy the first year of a new model because you never know what the problems are going to be at 100,000 miles. They don't even know, So it's like you really have to bite the bullet, and if you're gonna get one, you just got to take it with the grain of salt that like, hey, I'm the test dummy, and once you find these things out, it is what it is.
And we're waiting for the aftermarket, let's hope, to come into play. Usually that's what comes to the rescue of issues like this. And so who would be surprised if there was an aftermarket manufacturer of quality bearings that said, you know what, we're going to engineer a better bearing for this.
This reminds me of the silicone problem with the BRZs. That again feels like a rushed oversight. They're just spraying silicone on everything, just trying to get these things out the door, and then all of a sudden you end up with silicone all over the car, and it's
Yeah.
people are breaking down, and there's all these problems, and it's like, what is going on?
And certain things just cannot be done by machines. I can't say for entire certainty, but from what evidence that I have, and what I've witnessed and seen throughout the years, it lends to believe that Subaru is assembling and rather applying their RTV by hand. That is a by hand process. It's not an automated robot that laying those beads. Because quite frankly, if it was, well, A, they need to be calibrated better,
Yeah,
or B, they're obviously not doing it. You know,
yeah.
so that's kind of what I have to question.
Yeah. I came across a couple Reddit posts of people basically talking about this issue. Somebody with a 2014 Crosstrek had mentioned that they had went in for the valve body replacement at 140,000 miles, and they were denied financial assistance from Subaru, despite their known warranty extension. So, I mean, they're at 140, so I mean that could be definitely part of it. It's outside of the mileage, but still, it sucks. I mean, it sucks that if you, let's say, you go and you buy a 2014 Crosstrek, and this fix was never done. Well, now you're the person that's getting the end of the stick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's I don't know that these
Well,
situations always leave me a little bit like,
yeah. The one thing that I'll say, and I might be breaking the cardinal, let's call it magicians or mechanics rule here, and kind of giving some insider insight here to everybody in the group or in the pod who listens to the podcast. Rather, if you find yourself ever in a circumstance where you are denied particularly a warranty claim through a respective dealer, you ultimately have another backup option. That option is to reach out to Subaru of America.
corporate. Yep.
Yep. And for those in the group that are not local to America, I'm sure there's a similar Subaru of the UK or something. I'm sure they have something on that accord. But if you reach out to corporate, like you said, that is definitely the next best option. And what I've long advised customers to do is something my mother taught me years ago is the old adage that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, and that you start off very, very nice and you kind of, get sweet with the person who you're talking with. Hey, good afternoon. I hope you're having a wonderful day. They're like, well, how are you? Well, I wish I was doing better, but I'm hoping you could make my day better. And whether or not you want to, let's call it embellish a bit. And I always say it never hurts to highlight the things particular to your circumstance to your favor. Well, this is my first Subaru. I was told by everybody in my family who all own Subarus to get this, and Subarus are fantastic. And uh, I was actually looking to purchase another Subaru for my daughter, who's, just about to get her driver's license here in another 2 years, and we were planning to put her behind something that was safe and reliable. And now I find myself in this unfortunate situation of my warranty being denied in this situation. I'm really hoping you can do something about it to help me.
Yeah.
And take for a grain of salt that person on the other line of that phone probably had somebody yelling at them just before you called. Why won't you take my warranty? You're a terrible human being,
Yeah.
etc. They have, let's call it, just every person in every position has a modicum of discretion, and that discretion will get you a long way if you are in their favor of wanting to help them, or help you rather. So I've long taught my customers that if you're able to sweet talk them to a degree, you have a 9 in 10 chance better odds of getting something, taken care of. That's not a guarantee. And maybe once this goes viral, maybe that'll stop working as much at Subaru of America once the word gets out. But I just think it's also a way to move through life and how to deal with, kind of any circumstance where you find yourself on the phone with a customer support and agent. Just maybe be nice to them for 5 minutes and see how far that gets you.
Yeah. You know what? From working in multiple dealerships, I've always worked with Ford in particular, but dealerships take a lot of liberties that they do not have the power to do. They do a lot of things and make a lot of decisions that if corporate ever found out, it would be like the end. It would be literally corporate would come down and see what the hell is going on. And one of the things is that when you come in for a problem, they don't care. They'll deny it. They'll tell you they're not fixing it. They'll say, we're not warranting that part, or we're not going to fix this or fix that. Like, because at the end of the day, right, they don't want corporate to know there's any problems at all. So even if they do cover it, they will, the situations where they kind of want to sweep it under the rug, they'll take care of it just to make it go away. But the things that they do want to fight on and the things that they don't want to pay, like let's say they put a whole new engine in or something, and now it's outside of the engine warranty, and they don't want to be the ones to have to pay the bill because now Ford's not paying the bill. It's outside of the warranty, all of a sudden it becomes a problem for them. So they'll
Yeah.
deny it. And then what happens is they just pray that that customer walks away and gets frustrated and just says, I'm never coming here again, or I'm never buying a Ford again. That's their dream, is that you're never going to tell Ford anything, But realistically, when you call Ford and you say, hey, I'm at this dealer, I bought this engine here, you guys did all the work, it's a month outside of the warranty, but like I'm now without another engine. Ford would literally come down and they will fix it. They will get you an engine that, like those are the things that they do because they're corporate. They don't want to lose a customer. And
And if you sell it too, that always goes a long way. We've
that's it.
always owned Fords, our whole family owns Fords. We
Yeah.
wouldn't touch a Chevy in a million years. Again,
Yeah.
you can embellish a little bit, they're not going to look through your history.
But something that not many people know is that corporate has these meetings, right? And they invite all of the owners of all the dealerships out to these meetings, but only certain dealers get invited to these meetings. And so if you get blackballed by corporate, they will not give you, they have a discount system. So like now you're not getting certain discounts on parts. Now you're paying more. So now you got to charge your customers more. So that like changes everything. Their whole system is around how good of a dealership are you? If you have enough customers that come back with problems, well, Ford's not going to cover you. They're not backing you. You're on your own. I actually know somebody who was trying to buy a dealership for a really long time, and he would not get approved because even though you have the financial ability to buy a dealership or you can own one, if Ford or whoever doesn't approve you and they don't want you to own one of their dealerships, they can just do that. They can just say no. They don't have to give you a franchise. And
And
so
they can also pull that franchise for any number of reasons for violation of, whatever contract. That's ultimately the thing that everyone doesn't realize is that every dealership, they're rather the stealerships, as they're aptly sometimes they get a bad reputation. Every dealership ultimately is independent, and they're independently owned by somebody and, or some group, company rather, but their majority are owned by independent, owners, and their backs kind of against the wall from the manufacturers. I'm sure, as you know, from how much quantity they have to stock to where, oh, you guys only sold 50 cars last, quarter. If you don't sell 150 next quarter, we're going to pull your license. And or by the way, we're going to send you 150 cars. Even worse, we're going to send you the cars. You better figure out how to sell them. You
or put
know,
your inventory too.
well, yeah,
Yeah,
they
I
can
mean,
do
my
that.
my dealer, they had to sign up ahead of time for the EV program, and if you didn't sign up for the EV program, it was gonna be another, I think, like, 2 or 3 years until you could sign up again. So if you didn't sign up right there and pay the money, you're not getting chargers, you're not getting the EV service, you're not gonna be able to service them and deal with them, and so, like, they literally upfront were like, "This is the deal." A funny story about the guy I was just talking about, he couldn't get a dealership because Ford didn't want to give him one. And so he actually went and found people that would get approved to get a franchise, got them on board. They opened up and then assigned him CEO and basically backed out of the deal. And so he got his dealership through a back end deal. And then Ford realized that he was now one of their dealers. And they were just like, really? It's just like,
Clever.
but that's the thing is like these are the games that these dealerships play. It is insane. The amount of stuff that gets pulled is crazy.
It's up to the manufacturer to make cars. It's up to the dealerships to sell them. That's the
Yeah.
dynamic, and people don't realize that. The manufacturer
Yeah.
is not responsible for selling cars. It's not their job to sell cars. It's their job to make cars, and then they throw them at the dealers, and the dealer's job is to sell those cars.
And not just that, every dealership is multiple businesses. You have a sales manager for the sales floor, you have a service manager for the service floor. I mean, those are two separate businesses in one building. Everybody wants to blame the dealership as a whole, but like these sales guys probably have no idea what's going on with your 2014 Crosstrek that came in for an oil change. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's
And
an
if you do
interest.
body work, that's a whole nother department.
That too, it's a whole nother thing. It's crazy how these places function. And, honestly, I have a soft spot for dealers that are good dealers because it's a shame, dude. It's a shame that they get a bad rep because of all these shady dealers that are always trying to make a buck and people that own dealers that really shouldn't. Because the ones that should and the ones who are good dealerships that take care of their people, dude, they should be in business forever because those are the people that fight through a corporate, they fight through the hoops, they fight through everything every day to make sure you guys get the best thing that they can put out. So,
Which is hard. You're right. That's why there's only a few of them, because unfortunately there is so much pressure, I think, from the manufacturer ultimately. Not to point fingers upwards. It's saying on the low man on the totem pole, any rung of the ladder, it's easier to point up and say, well, yeah, it's the manufacturers that are responsible for the a lot of the way the industry is.
well, I feel like a lot of it too is that dealerships were like that slimy kind of thing back in the day. And then now they've gotten a lot more corporate and a lot more structured and a lot more, hey, this is what you do from corporate. And I feel like people still have this like tension when they walk into a dealer and they hate being there and they have this like gut feeling that they're getting screwed. And I feel like dealers have embodied it and they're kind of like the Joker, They're like, you think I'm the bad guy? I'll be the bad guy. And it's like this continuous cycle that has just continued for decades. And it's like, I feel like if dealerships were a little bit more customer friendly in certain areas and the people were less aggressive when they walked in the door, maybe we could find peace.
Yeah. There's a middle ground everywhere, and who knows? Maybe the start of this discussion, Pat, will be the start of a beautiful, larger conversation where people start to look at dealerships a little bit differently. Again, not I don't think we're going to change the world overnight, but who knows? The more people that at least are in the group think a little bit differently, I think that's the ultimate goal of this podcast, as well as the group on a whole, is to challenge, think outside the box, and don't just take the first answer on the internet for and put an ECU in your car because someone else said it fixed it.
For real. Yeah. I really hope that a lot of people have found good information in the Subaru Mechanics group. And I mean, from everything I've seen over the 10 years of owning this group, it's been amazing. It's been an amazing ride seeing how many people have actually fixed their cars or, this is a crazy story. I'll just finish it off with this. I live in northern Jersey. I've always lived up here since I was a kid. And I decided I was going to move down to the Jersey Shore. And I was working in Ford Performance at the time, doing like Mustangs and stuff. And I was living down there. I moved into a house with two guys I met on Craigslist, totally not sketchy at all. And they were both, in college. And so it worked out. And I went out to the bar one night and I'm sitting at the bar and this guy comes and he sits next to me and I see that he's looking at car stuff. So, whatever, we're talking a little bit. We're talking about hockey and whatever. And then we start talking about cars. And I said, what do you drive? And he goes, oh, I drive a Subaru. And I said, oh, you probably know my group. Subaru Mechanics, this is when we were at probably like 230,000 members. And he goes, dude, you're not going to believe this. He goes, I just joined the group tonight. And he goes, I actually posted a question to fix the window motor on my car. And he goes, I had an answer within 10 minutes. And he goes, it actually fixed my window. And dude, I started dying. I was like, what are the chances that I run into a guy at the bar that sits next to me that he just joined the group tonight and already got his car fixed? And I was like, dude, I just like
That's
really
awesome.
right there, the whole thing became worth it for me. I was like, this is the whole thing, dude. This guy, I would have never known if I didn't just start talking to him about like hockey or whatever. And then come to find out, like he literally got help that night. It's crazy. So, I really am hoping that this podcast will also be a forum to help people. I want to bring people from the group on and talk about their builds and maybe kind of help them with situations that they're in. We're gonna have more business owners on here. Hopefully, we're gonna have Trenton Teeter soon. We're figuring that out. We have some tuners lined up. Maybe talk to them about tuning processes and procedures. So I hope everybody stays tuned and you guys are looking forward to the rest of the episodes like we are. We've been seeing all the comments. We are trying to respond as quick as possible. We love the feedback. I mean, Dave and I really get a kick out of this. We were messaging each other today about all the feedback we were getting, and we just really love that you guys are along for the ride. So we will see you guys on the next one, and hopefully we'll have Trenton on that. Peace out.